Hi, my name is Lena and welcome to my channel. I have just finished Can You Forgive Her by Anthony Trollope, and I'd like to talk about it to give you my first impressions. It was my first Trollope novel. And I wish I had vlogged because I think I forgot most of my first impressions, considering that I wasn't ready to make a video on the week 3rd of the read-along that Steve Donoghue was hosting, and now it's the 4th week, so I think quite a lot of the things I could have told you I have forgotten. First of all, I was surprised by myself. I was surprised at my impressions. There was a moment when George Vavasor and Berger Fitzgerald were having a chat, were having a drink, and Berger was telling about his yet unformed plan to elope with Lady Glencora, and George was kind of mocking him, but he wasn't trying to talk some sense into Berger as a friend should have done. But nevertheless, this scene kind of almost redeemed them in my eyes, and I was surprised at that. First of all, I thought, well, Berger is a heavy drunkard as well as a stupid and irresponsible man. But then he was talking about Lady Glencora, and I thought, wow, he really loves her. And as though it made everything all right, the fact that he didn't actually consider her fate when she eloped with him, that she will be a ruined woman, that her reputation will be ruined, and he doesn't actually think about the money, how he could support them both when he couldn't support himself. So he was stupid, he was a heavy drunkard, and I don't see how the fact that he really loved Lady Glencora could make it all right. And I thought a bit better about George Vavasor when he put his name to the checks or bills that Berger was writing. I shouldn't have. I know now that George is a villain of the book, but at that time I thought better of him. And I think that this title, Can You Forgive Her, can be applied to almost any woman in the book. For example, can you forgive Mrs. Marsham for telling on Glencora, for going to fetch her husband when Glencora was dancing with Berger Fitzgerald rather recklessly at Lady Monk's party? Can you forgive Alice for jilting John Grey and then jilting George and giving George most of her money? Or can you forgive Lady Glencora for wanting to elope with Burger Fitzgerald, and then for treating her husband rather badly on their first weeks of traveling abroad? Or can you forgive Lady MacLeod for disappearing for the entire duration of the book and reappearing at the very end of it? Or can you forgive Widow Greenough for her flirting with two men? Or can you forgive Kate for her desire to see Alice as her sister and to bring Alice and George together? Or I don't know, almost any lady in the book. This flirting of Widow Greenough, Anne Greenough, with her two suitors, I think before she chose the one, it became rather ugly in the relationship, in this freneminity. I have no idea how to put it. When Captain and the farmer, this animosity between them, it became rather ugly. I didn't like the fact that Mr. Chizaker, I am sure that I pronounced it wrong, that he needed Captain to assert himself, to constantly tell the Captain about his money, to count the pieces of ham the Captain was carving for himself when the Captain actually was his guest at Oilermead. It became quite ugly, for me at least. It was funny, but it kind of lost the lightness. And I kind of thought that Anne Greenough will choose Mr. Chizaker, but now I understand why he chose the Captain, because it was actually a rather clever choice. He married a man, and at the same time she is her own mistress. It actually was very clever of her, and she is my favorite character in the book. And this ugly scene when Kate and George quarreled, when she said to him that she was ashamed of him, and he pushed her and she broke her hand. I liked Aunt Greenough even more when she wanted to persevere, when she wanted George to answer for this. But of course, Kate wouldn't allow this. But the way Aunt Greenough wanted to defend Kate and to punish George, for that I loved her even more. And I kind of was hoping that the relationship between Alice and her father will become more close, more heartwarming. But of course, George Vavasor, he was too set in his own ways. He kind of made an effort for Alice when she was in danger, but after she returned to Mr. Grey, he returned to his own affairs, to his own club. I didn't really like the scene when Alice and Mr. Great were reconciled, when they decided to marry again. It was going kind of alright, but he was when he was telling her that he always believed, all this time he believed that she loved him and that he forgave her right away. It was alright, but he kept talking about her as a bargain, and then he kind of, I don't know, stepped on it. I didn't, I cannot put my finger on the exact reason why I don't like this scene, but I don't like it. I know that afterwards they kind of talk as equals when they talk about his going into politics, but I'm not sure. I didn't like this scene when he asked Alice to marry him again, and when he decided that Alice will marry him again, that she said yes. I don't like this scene. And I can see very well as mothers and aunts and elder sisters would tell the girls back then when this novel was first published that they should marry this Mr. Grey, um, or else they would come through the same troubles that Alice came through, the same grievance, that some rascal would swindle them of their money, and to use Alice as an example that they cannot be on their own, that they cannot make decisions by themselves about their life, about their money, that they need Mr. Grey to decide everything for them and to take care of them and so on. But I'm all right with it. It was this kind of time back then. And although Alice does surrender to Mr. Grey, and she talks about herself as vanquished, I like the idea that Anne Greenough is very much her own mistress and also a mistress to her husband. As to the Lady Glencora and her husband, I rather liked their getting to know each other and maybe falling in love from the Lady Glencora's part. And of course, her giving a birth to an heir. And I especially like this part when she says that she wants to get into Baden um, the second time, and she wants to gamble, she wants to get her Napoleon back. At that part, I laughed out loud. I usually chuckle because I like the writing style, I like the sense of humor. But at this one phrase, I was laughing out loud, and because it kind of, I don't know, brought Lady Glencora to life for me. And I really enjoyed their staying abroad. And as for the marriage between Alice and Mr. Grey and her relatives coming to this wedding and bringing presents and forgiving Alice in person, I can't help feeling that if it wasn't for the fact that Mr. Grey was such great friends with Mr. Palliser and that he was going into Parliament and was held by Mr. Palliser, I can't help feeling that they would forgive her in a letter, that wouldn't get to this wedding, that they wouldn't brought all these presents, that the only reason for them to be there is because Alice and her future husband are accepted in this higher society, that they are friends with Mr. and Mrs. Palliser. And I kind of was a bit disappointed that Trollope didn't make anything for Kate apart from this 500 a year. I don't remember such things, but he kind of gave her money, but she is stiff, she is very unfeminine, and we are not sure whether she ever going to marry. I think he could have introduced her to Geoffrey Palliser just for the duration of the wedding. As for my impression on the entire book, it took me too long to get into the story. For the first 20 chapters, I couldn't care less about the story. I wasn't into it. I loved the writing style. I loved the sense of humor. But I wasn't compelled to continue reading. It took me too long. And I wonder whether it's the thing with all of his novels. Because right now, with all this cheap and easy entertainment within my reach, with Netflix, all the TV series, it's kind of fortunate that Netflix doesn't have a lot of good sci-fi TV series for me. And so with all these books that provide easy entertainment, fast-paced, exciting books like detective stories, fantasy books, sci-fi books, and with the series that is also very entertaining and undemanding, and it kind of such novels as this novel by Trollope, they have a lot of competition right now in our times. It probably wasn't back then, but right now I absolutely sure that if it wasn't for Steve Donoghue's Read Along, I wouldn't have finished this book. I wouldn't have read 20 chapters when I wasn't into the story. I wouldn't have read 20 chapters to get into the story. I would like to get in the story from the very first chapter, to be hooked, to feel the need to turn these pages. I'm sorry, guys. Well, thank you for watching. Goodbye and happy reading.